And we are live. Hello, good afternoon. This is Neil Long, and please welcome a special guest co-presenter for today. And I've got a banner for her. Here she is. Drumroll, please. Radio presenter, actor, and comedian.
Hello,
Emily Catine. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thanks.
to MRS. Invited you to guest co-present today. Russ is away, so I'm standing in. We did consider having a virtual background of a beautiful house with a grand piano. The problem was it wasn't remotely convincing, because every time we moved our head, we get like this vapor trail across the heads. And
it's not really very us, is it?
No, not really. So we're giving you beautiful nature view today, beautiful nature view. So welcome to MRS for another week. Standing in for us this week, I am Monday and Wednesday, and Phil Dave will be doing Friday. And I want to bring our special guest on as soon as possible today, because I really want to talk to this lady. Or shall I share my scammer story first?
Oh, well, this is quite special.
Shall we do Scam Watch? A quick Scam Watch. I have this little hobby. I like to bait scammers. And that
dangerous game.
But they don't know who I am. Well, actually, he probably does know who I am, but apparently he's in Australia, so I'm not terribly bothered.
So scammer bait.
Scammer baiting. So ding up on my feed, it said, "Hello, sir." That's the first red flag. If they call you sir or the English is broken, always be careful. And I don't want to sound patronising like a long playing record, but people do fall for this stuff.
But how many people call you sir normally, Neil? That's how you know they're a scammer.
Only the police. Generally, only the police or people that want something from me, which I suppose that would fit into this. Hello, sir. I said, hi. How are you, sir? I said, yes. Then I get a big thumbs up emoji. You can probably see that. Then it said HLW. Now, Emily and I have done on the radio show this morning. We were discussing this on air. HLW. I thought that was bad broken English, but you thought it was some sort of acronym, didn't you?
Well, it looks like a typo originally, and then he does it again later. And you say, well, nobody makes a typo twice, or not many people make a typo twice. So we're like, what is it?
So I didn't actually believe it at first, and then I thought, actually, maybe she's got a point. So I looked it up, and HLW means high level waist, or it's a German thing, Herzlungen Wiederbelebung, which translates to German cardiopulmonary resuscitation. That's easy for me to say. Or HLW, hybrid large white, as in turkeys. But no, the problem was I didn't put slang.
Yeah, that's the key.
You took it one stage further.
Yeah, if you're looking up slang, then you have to put in the word slang. And so I just put in Urban Dictionary. What is it? HLW mean? Yeah, and it's from the Bare Naked Ladies song "One Week," and it's what is it?
Hot like wasabi.
Hot like wasabi.
So,
Neil, you are hot like wasabi.
Tell me something I don't already know. No, there's no according.
No, sorry, not according to. According to everybody.
I can take you off screen. Anyway, so HLW. So then I get a kind of Zen text. It said, "Hello, sir. What can you identify with if you don't have any problems?" And that's one of those questions that's meant to access your unconscious mind, like a Zen kind of cone kind of thing, and with that kind of puzzling emoji. Can you see that on there? So I said, not sure, perhaps the sound of one hand clapping. Which
I think is a pretty good response, actually. I like that. I think that's very...
Thank you.
That's very cool.
Yeah, thank you. Bunch of Buddhists on a protest march. What do we want? Nothing. Anyway, they says, when do we want it? It doesn't matter. And finally, why was the Buddha awful at hoovering? Because he had no attachments. Anyway, that's for our spiritually minded folks this morning. Anyway, I saw all of your things on Facebook. And then he said HLW again, and then says, let's eat together in this room, which is a picture of 5 very nice bottles of wine. So I said at this point, where is that? That looks lovely. And then I sent a message with Emily Kate on. I can't play it because you won't hear it here. And this was broadcast on the other radio station this morning. And it's basically me sending a surreptitious message and my wife catching me. What are you doing? I'm like, nothing.
So we're setting this all up, especially.
Setting this all up. And then basically he says, I want to see you. Please send your picture. So I've got the world's ugliest picture, which I'm going to send in a minute. But I think this is a bit ambiguous. The final punchline from this one so far is, I like to chat with foreign friends much more, never mind. Now, you interpreted that one way, didn't you?
Well, I did. You said you thought he was saying shove off then, and I sort of went, no, he's saying that he doesn't mind not seeing your photo. I like to chat with friends much more than seeing photos, is how I read it. And
I interpreted it as, I've managed to piss a scammer off enough that he's actually ghosted me, which would be brilliant. Anyway,
I think you're going to have to try harder.
I will give you an update on Wednesday. Let's quickly go to the comments, then we'll bring our guest on. Fellow radio girl, Melissa Montagnon. That's easy for me to say. Happy Monday. Hello, Melissa, fellow radio girl. Graham Pack with with a high level waist, are they referring to your trousers?
That's what I said this morning. Exactly.
It's WASTE.
So you throw up here like
I'm not Simon Cowell.
Like Rick Mail, yeah.
Yes, please. And Dr. Asa Don Brown, who is very high up in the psychiatric community in the USA and Canada. Civilian Emily Kate, good morning from New York. Good morning to you. And Liz says hello. Right,
nice.
So
got a lot of messages. Lovely.
Indeed, do keep them coming in, particularly any comments on the subject we've got for you today, which is absolutely fascinating. Let's bring them on. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome friend, podcaster, and now author, Helen Snape, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me back.
Hello, Helen.
Hello, lovely to meet you.
Yes, that's Emily. Emily, that is Helen, and I made a banner for you as well. There we go, Helen Snape. Oh, spelt it. I've written Helen Spape. Helen, don't type that in. Oh God, see, you're not even I'm immune for a typo. All right, there we go. Put your proper banner up. Brilliant. Now it's a good moment for you to be back on, and I'm just going to keep quiet. I'm going to let Emily Kate ask a load of the questions today, and we want to hear excerpts from your new book because you're an author now.
I am. I can't believe it. So it was like just over a week ago, and I published Drop the Fake Smile.
Congratulations. That's a huge deal to actually have something published. That's brilliant. And I do think that's a clever title.
Very much so. Very much so. And also, I actually did work out the technology, so you don't have to hold the book up because I could do this. Look at that.
Look at that. Slick.
Oh, that's posh.
You like that?
Clever. Yeah.
You must feel very proud, Helen.
I am. I'm still kind of buzzing. Like, I actually did it. Like
How long had you had the idea?
Oh, well, I've probably had the idea of writing a book for about 5 years, but I didn't start writing it until about 3.5 years ago. And I just, and the title came pretty quickly, actually. At first I thought, oh, maybe that title's it's a bit too punchy, but actually people really seem to like it. So I went with it.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I like it. I thought of you on Friday because I was doing a gig and I got asked to play the Isley Brothers song Behind the Painted Smile. And I'm guessing that's about a similar subject, about painting a smile on the mask that we all wear. But then what's really going on underneath? Because it was that way for many years for you, which forms the basis of your whole body of work, which is a brilliant body of work, by the way, which is out in the world now. And now a book. So I'll let Emily Kate ask a couple more questions.
Well, yeah. I'd love to know a bit more about it because Neil knows so much more than I do. So can you explain to me as a layman in this?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So the title, Drop the Fake Smile, the subtitle kind of explains it all really. So the subtitle is The Recovering People Pleaser's Guide to Self-Love, Boundaries and Healthy Relationships.
And if anyone at any point was wondering what the mental health connection is, there it is.
Yeah. So it's all for people that are basically too nice for their own good. So, I talk about people pleasers, and it's really just anyone that is like really driven by this desire to make other people happy, except that they're often doing it at the expense of their own wants and needs, which is where it becomes a problem.
And I suppose at one end of that spectrum, it just feels a bit uncomfortable. If something's a bit off and you can't quite place where, to the other extreme where there's literally nothing left of you and you've literally lost contact with your very sense of who you are, I would imagine, particularly if there's narcissists circling, shall we say.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I mean, that's really what happened to me in my marriage, is that, I essentially lost myself. Because I was so focused on other people and particularly on making my husband happy, that I completely lost the sense of who I was or what I wanted. And that
because you can never make a narcissist happy, no matter what. Their whole shtick is held in place by being unhappy and making other people feel less than, so they can carry on playing their little games. In my understanding. And just very briefly, I know I've asked you this question before, but just for the benefit of those that are just tuned in, what was the turning point for you? You suddenly thought, right, enough, I've had enough. And then what do you do to begin this journey to getting better?
Yeah, so I stayed in that relationship a very long time. I just kept trying harder and harder because I thought that's how life worked. For me, it wasn't until I actually got a phone call from my mum, which was very unusual because I'd kind of been cut off from my family. But she was ringing me to tell me that she'd been diagnosed with myeloma, which is an incurable cancer.
Oh, God.
And that was really my wake-up call, because it made me realize, wow, like life is short, like life is precious, and like what the hell am I doing with mine? And it also, I think it sparked some anger in me, which like I never got angry, right? But I knew that
because you were far too much of a nice person to get angry, of course. Because nice people, particularly nice girls, I think girls suffer from this more. Far too nice to be angry. It's all about pleasing other people, right?
Never got angry. Didn't really understand like where my anger had gone, but I never got angry. But something sparked inside of me, because I knew that if I wanted to go and see my mother, that I was going to have to like negotiate this with my husband.
Well, that was what I wanted. The question is that how did he react when you told him, I've spoken to my mother and she's got this terrible disease?
Well, of course, like he seemed sympathetic. But you know, he was very good at kind of saying one thing and then doing another.
So appearing sympathetic, and then actually when it came down to you, so you're worrying about how you're going to go and see your mother because of his reaction.
Right. And it was the combination of those things, really, like this kind of this newfound anger, and also I think just that part of me that knows what's best for me going, right, you know, this is it, like you need to do something. And I didn't know quite what that was, but I knew that, you know, I really wasn't coping. And so the first step for me was going and finding a therapist, because like I felt like I was going crazy and I just couldn't manage life. And so that was a huge step for me, because I was so like proud of being this like independent and, you know, from all intents and purposes looked like successful woman. And so to go and actually ask for help was like, oh my God, I just must have like failed life.
When actually it's a very brave thing to do, of course.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite of the truth. But your ego, which has never got anything good to say about anyone, particularly ourselves, will say, "Oh no, you're a failure. You should be able to do this. You should be able to do that." And it's just so not true. And the best thing you could do is listen to that, if you like, other part of us, which I guess we've all got. But how much do we listen to it? Pause there for a second. You're getting some congratulations in Dave Sleet. Congratulations, Graham. You have to forgive him. Looking at the title, I thought it's about dentistry. Oh, come on, Graham, that's terrible. I'll make the crap jokes around here. Dave Sleet again, raising the click, you so-and-so, it won't click. Raising the self-awareness that people-pleasing has become a negative factor is so important. And it's a balance, isn't it? Because, I mean, we've all got a little bit of it. And I want people to be pleased with the show. I want Russ to be pleased with what we've done in his absence. But I don't base my whole sense of self-worth on one show or one comedy gig, for example. It's, you know, you've got to have a good sense of yourself, and then everything else is peripheral, I guess. And fellow radio girl Melissa Montagnan says, I never get bored with this subject, and being in media, people expect you to be happy all the time. I keep it real. However, I've definitely have done and do the fake smile on occasion. Hands up. Helen, what do you think of people that do share their challenges? Because not everyone wants to hear other people's challenges. Good question, Melissa. Till she's a journalist.
So I don't think like you need to share everything with everyone. Do you know what I mean? Like you know, if I'm having a crappy day, I don't like go and necessarily like share that on Facebook, because I'm like, well, why am I doing that? Like, to me, it comes to like, what is my motivation? So like, to me, if I've got a challenge, personally, I want to work through it, you know, perhaps with loved ones or with good friends. And then maybe afterwards, then I might share something about the challenge that I've had, because once I've worked through it, then I can maybe share something that I think other people will find helpful. So that's the point at which I like to kind of share a challenge, is like, you know, this is what I've been going through. This is what I've learned. maybe you're going to find this useful too. But, I don't want to share necessarily my challenges with everyone whilst I'm going through them, because I want to share them with people I know that, that understand me, that have got my back. I don't feel the need to share it with everyone.
And that's how you feel now, because you don't see yourself as a people pleaser now. Is that right?
I would say I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I would guess that a people pleaser would probably share sometimes when it wasn't appropriate, simply to make the other person feel better, try and sort of glean some sort of balance between the in the relationship, and to make sometimes giving away too much of yourself is what I mean.
Or even if you had an audience who liked this sort of stuff and you felt you had to please the audience, I guess. But the fact that you're saying, you're saying you're a recovering people pleaser. It's not for me to argue with that. But the fact that you're saying, no, I'm selective. I've got my inner circle. I want to share what I want to.
Yeah.
That screams progress, massive progress to me.
Yes.
Hugely, massively, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think as people pleasers, we can go a couple of ways with kind of this sharing thing. So, like, on the one hand, sometimes we really don't share when perhaps we should, because we don't want to bring our sadness to other people, right? Because we want them to be happy, we maybe don't share when actually it would be a good idea for us to share, because we don't want to share. Yeah, we don't want to put our sadness or our anger onto other people.
You don't want to dump on people. You don't want to download on them.
Yeah, but there are times when we need to share. But you're right. Like, we can kind of do the opposite and overshare. So that's that's kind of a symptom of having perhaps weak or porous boundaries, that we maybe we overshare with somebody that we don't know actually very well. Like, maybe
if somebody asks, if somebody's asking a probing question, you don't really feel you want to answer it, but you'd answer it to please them, is actually where then you're people pleasing and giving away too much of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
oh my God, it's real.
It's great.
It's like you can't believe it's not a mirage. This isn't a dream that you're going to wake up from. This is very, very real.
So, Helen, can I ask you? So, when you went and had the therapy, is there so how did it progress? What was the sort of spectrum of how this therapy worked out for you?
When I first started therapy, I would describe myself as I had a very fragile sense of self. And also, just because of the nature of the relationship that I'd been in, I felt very confused, because, my husband had basically made me question my own sense of reality.
Some gaslighting in there as well, then.
Yeah. So I really needed, a healthy person that would validate actually my own experience and my own feelings. Like, it was kind of that basic. And I also just needed a space where I could just feel like I really could let down all the walls, because
you were able to do that, were you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, finally I can just let it all out, and I don't have to wear that fake smile.
It's such a relief, particularly in those early days of healing. Anyone that's been, this including me, been on a kind of journey like that, you really need that, and that you just need that safe space.
Yes, and what was
safe space? A brilliant therapist who I mentioned on the show from time to time, Rosie Whetstone. Her philosophy is, she says, hold them, walk with them, release them. So what you're describing is the hold them stage. Just let it all come out, and then walk with them. So essentially, she's gently teaching you the new techniques, helping you reframe things, helping you see it differently. And then, of course, when the work is done, release them.
And the holding and walk with them is the acknowledging of them. Like you said, you can feel embarrassed to go to a therapist, feel that you're failing, and actually, if you acknowledge why you're feeling, that you acknowledge you're feeling a certain way, acknowledge why those feelings have come about, then you can process them and learn to deal with them, and actually then learn to get past them. But otherwise, until you hold them up into the open and own them, then they don't belong to you, and then suddenly you're not really dealing with the problem.
Yeah, you can't process anything that you refuse to hold, I
Exactly.
suppose.
Yeah.
But some people would be so ashamed to even feel these feelings because the mask says, I've got it all sorted out. I know everything. And no human being has all the answers. There's no, we're so hard on ourselves. I want to hear some excerpts from the book. Do you?
Yeah, I'd love to.
We're gonna forum is yours, Helen.
Okay, all right.
Just going to do a couple more comments before we do that, though. Back to Melissa Montagnon, our fellow radio girl. Thanks. On my socials, I'm always happy. Over coffee with friends, lol. I do love a good offload, and there's nothing wrong with that. Helen, thank you. Yep. And Dave, Dr. Asa Don Brown says, as Dave Sleet says, understanding our need for people pleasing begins by raising the self-awareness, and it's about accepting and approving of our inner person. Yeah, it's loving the self first, isn't it? For after all, we are more than our successes and failures, the good and the bad. We are and inmate being. I don't think you mean
and
that.
Innate being.
An inmate being. Only 5 years to go. In need of our own unconditional state, which sounds quite metaphysical and spiritual, but actually it's true, because you literally cannot love another unless you love yourself. And
and that's the core of people pleasing, isn't it? It's feeling not worthy enough to be just yourself, good or bad. You know, just who you are. You feel that you can only be worthy if you are making somebody else happy, elevating them, and that's the issue. Which
is the danger if you're being constantly gaslit, being told nothing you ever do is good enough. Because I think I spoke to someone else that had been in a narcissistic relationship, and she said the first question I asked my therapist was, am I a narcissist? You know, they cause you to doubt yourself that much. You've been gaslit. You actually think that you're the problem. Yeah.
That's called projection, isn't it? Where they project their own issue onto you and say that's accuse you of the very thing that they're doing.
Yes, and when you know what you're looking for, you can see it in plain sight. It's very, very, very obvious. I always remember Gar was talking to you once. He went, I hate people that have, he's really angry, irate about it. I hate people that have affairs. I hate people that have affairs. And guess what he was doing?
Exactly.
There's the man doth protest too much. Anyway, shall we?
Let's hear these excerpts. We want to hear them.
Okay, all right. So the first one is a section called "You Are Always Putting Others' Needs Before Your Own." You have taken on board the message that it isn't good to be needy, and you are very careful to put others' needs and even others' wants first before your own. For example, maybe you've never chosen which restaurant to eat out at when you meet your friend. Even if your friend were to ask, you would say, well, I don't mind, you choose. You let others choose what to watch on the TV. You help organize the community fair because you know they need your help, even though you're already overextended and could use some more rest time. In the short term, you gain some temporary approval from other people, which can feel good for a little while. However, you are also squishing down your own feelings and ignoring your own needs and wants, and you are not looking after yourself or your inner child.
The inner child's always a particularly interesting concept, isn't it? The idea that that's where the real truth is. What a child isn't. They don't tend to be people pleasers. They are very confident, overly confident sometimes.
No filter at all.
Exactly, no filter, confident, totally know that they belong in the world. They own the space. They have full, autonomy over themselves. And yet somehow we learn to get rid of that confidence and squash ourselves down. And so this message here, you're saying this is slightly further on in therapy, where you realise that it's not right what you're doing, but trying to deal with it is the difficulty. Is that right?
Yeah, so it is. It's like we catch ourselves kind of doing these things automatically. So it is beginning to. It is that self-awareness. It's recognizing. Oh, when is it that I don't give an opinion when when actually like the other person would really like to know. Yeah, I find it interesting on your situation.
Find it interesting as well when you were reading that excerpt. It's down to the most basic things, choosing what to have for dinner, where to eat at a restaurant, literally it's tendrils of this people pleasing, literally getting to the most basic, the most everyday, the most mundane aspects of life, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of what I like to do, is kind of to pick out these examples which, as you say, like they are just like from our everyday life, but we don't necessarily recognize that they're people pleasing. Like, I remember when I I got some cold chips in a restaurant once. Well, they were kind of tepid. And my partner asked, oh, you know, he said, oh, my chips are a bit cold, I'm going to send them back. He said, oh, how are yours? And I said, oh, they're fine. And I sat there and I ate these like tepid chips, and it was all because like I didn't want to like embarrass the waiting staff. Like I kind of, it's just like this crazy stuff that goes on in your head. It's like, oh no, I don't want them to feel awkward, you know, whilst I'm sitting here eating these cold chips that I've paid for.
Yeah, so your dinner's much less important than, so your dinner's much less important. Your enjoyment of that meal is much less important than how they feel about whether they've brought you something right or wrong. And actually the chances are, particularly the waiting staff, they wouldn't care at all. They'd say, well, the chef gave it to me, it's not my fault they're cold, and hand them back. But somehow it's too much to say, I need my chips to be the way I want them.
I think also that's a very British thing, isn't it? You know, I'll just stiff up a lip and all that sort of stuff.
Well, people pleasing generally is quite a British thing, isn't it?
Well, I was going to ask: is this mainly a British? Are most of your clients British, shall we say, or does people pleasing exist all around the world? It must do.
It does exist all around the world. I think probably the attitude towards it differs in different places. I mean, I get probably most interest like from the UK and from the US. Like it's definitely seen as a big kind of issue over there as well. But I think there are some cultures where, you know, it probably is expected that maybe you just smile when you feel crap.
Well, actually, in some, and I won't name any cultures' names here, but there are some where it's so enculturated. It's the rule, isn't it? You know, and pretty heavily enforced as well. Let's see what Melissa Montana is saying. People pleasing is an easy option as we all want to be liked, however strong we are unhappy with ourselves. But clearly, it's something that can be recovered from. It's just really like learning one little two-letter word, isn't it? No.
I remember when it's such a small word, and yet it can be so hard to say.
I'll mention this every time this conversation comes up, because we've had this conversation before. Because where did we meet, by the way? Emily Kate was asking me earlier. I can't remember how that all unfolded.
Oh my goodness!
So I don't have to feel bad.
Was it through Nikki? Was it through Nikki? Maybe
through Nikki Patrick. Oh yes, you were on her podcast, weren't you?
Yeah.
It's somewhere in the bottom of my bag. That was it. Thank you.
So Helen, let me understand. So now you've written this wonderful book, but this comes from you now become a coach into not being a people pleaser. Is that right?
Yes.
So it's interesting. You've had your own journey through understanding yourself, how you got into that relationship, and why you would be such a people pleaser. I'm assume that you've understood your whole history of what happened to make you like that. What have you learned from your clients?
Oh, I love that question.
Yeah, so do I.
I think I've learned, like, no matter kind of how much of a chronic people pleaser you might have been, like just the amazing change that can happen. So, like, because I often feel like I'm like the equivalent of like a tennis coach. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like I'm the best person at recovering from people pleasing, but I know what works. And so I see what my clients go on to do, and I'm like, that's amazing.
Actually, you're giving them a sort of freedom, aren't you? So once that's lifted, that fear of being authentic, then suddenly they've got all of the the tools to go ahead and actually be exactly who they are.
And it must feel like a blessed relief when you find, and I mean this in a good way, when you literally don't care what other people think. I don't mean harming people, that goes without saying, but within the law and within decency, when you don't care what other people think, it's such a relief
to know you're worthy and equal.
And to know you're worthy and equal to anyone else, and
anyone else.
Doesn't matter a damn what other people think. I mean, what a relief!
Yeah, and it saves so much energy as well. Like, I didn't.
It's a lot of work to be a people pleaser, I would have thought.
It is, because you're always, kind of hyper vigilant and like wondering, like, oh, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? It takes so much energy. Whereas if you're mainly focused on yourself, then that's where your energy's going.
Absolutely. Yeah.
feel that some people pleasers, and correct me if I'm wrong, but may sort of feel that everyone feels this way, this sort of anxiety to please people and sort of be forthcoming and be the proactive one, when actually it's more common to be sitting back and just saying, I just am who I am. And it's obviously a much more comfortable way to exist. And I used to be a bit of a people pleaser too. And I've always felt this huge sense of relief that I could just sit back and just be. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to force everything.
It's a state of being. It's human being, not human doing, isn't it? You know, don't be a doer, do a beer. I like that one.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You know what?
Do you know what I mean, Helen?
Yeah, I think thinking back to, when I was really like a chronic people pleaser, I think I could recognize that there were people that didn't have that same kind of approach to life as me. But I think my thinking was more kind of black and white around it. So I absolutely didn't understand it. And I could see that there were some people who just sort of felt like kind of solid and confident, but then there were other people who I thought, well, like they're just nasty people, like they're not nice at all, like whereas I'm really nice. So
yes, I recognize that. Yeah.
I recognize that in myself as well, but it's an awful lot of work to keep up that niceness, but just to let other people go and say, and I suppose if you hold that set of beliefs, we were talking about NLP on the show last week, and we'll do some more later this week, by the way. But one of the NLP presuppositions is, and this is a good time to bring it in, you don't respond to reality, you react and respond to your map of reality. So if you think the world is full of people that you have to please, that's what you'll see. And I suppose if an NLP person was dealing with a people pleaser, they've shown they have more choices and didn't have to respond and react that way. You can rewrite your map of the world at any point, but people pleaser is so busy trying to rewrite everyone else's map of the world to keep them happy, and of course that never works.
Well, that's Anais Nin's famous quote, and it says, "We don't see the things the way they are; we see things the way we are."
And that's another way of putting exactly that point. Do a couple more comments, then can we have another excerpt from the book in a minute?
Yes.
You could do this all day. Honestly, we're going to keep you on for the whole hour, by the way. So you can share plenty. This is your forum for the next 27 and a half minutes. Very quickly, Melissa Montagnan, people pleasing is an easier option. No, we did that one already. We all want to be liked, however strong and happy we are with ourselves. Liz says, I've never been a natural people pleaser, although it's sometimes easier to say nothing for a quiet life.
But that's quite interesting.
That's different. That's called selective attention, and I'm really good at that.
But actually, it's still... I suppose it's not quite people pleasing, but you're still making a choice that it's sort of, I'm going to do this to make them happier, because rather than have contention. But then some people are naturally contentious, aren't they? And actually quite like the fire of but
that's more like people
not like that.
That's more like people pleasing by omission rather than commission.
Yes.
Isn't it?
And that isn't doing what I said about that proactive people pleasing, where I'm trying all the time to please you.
Yeah.
Rather, if she's just sitting back and saying, I'm just saying nothing, there's more confidence in that.
It's sort of passive non-aggressive.
I think it's the difference between kind of just doing it like unconsciously, automatically, like maybe I'll keep quiet and small, but it's because of the people pleasing kind of protective pattern, as opposed to like consciously choosing, well, I'm not going to say anything in this instance because I don't want to get involved in this discussion, or I don't have time, or I don't have the energy. It feels very different.
Yes, the whether you feel I'd like to say something here, or I'd like to say something here, but I'm going to censor myself. And that's the difference. Saying I don't want to say something because I don't want the contention, I can't be bothered to argue with this idiot anyway, that's all fine. It's saying I'm not going to say something for the fear of their reaction, for a fear of exposure. Totally different.
Yeah,
that's the thing, being silent.
Doing something for a fear of doing something, or doing something because you just really can't be bothered and you've got better things, you're more busy to be focused on yourself. Two completely different vibes. A couple more comments. This is Liz again. This day isn't because of several shit life events. We can use rude language on here, by the way.
Thank God for that.
Yes. I can't be asked with other people's dramas. And this is a big one. As Helen mentioned, there's nothing like a huge life-changing event to make you wake up to pleasing yourself.
I think that's very interesting. I think
amen to that.
I think catalysts are often an answer to sort of solving a certain, if you have a particular mental health problem, whether it's something like this, or confidence, or knowing that you're not seeing your family enough because they need you, or whatever it is, it can take a catalyst. For a lot of people it does. But whether it does or it doesn't, it's just so great to address something.
Yeah, call it a rude awakening. The first bit's a bit rude, but then there is the awakening afterwards. What one would help. Yeah. Melissa Montagnon, Melissa, you're definitely more of a diplomat than me. Well, I haven't seen you when you've been downloading, Melissa, but if I saw you socially, I might see a different side to Melissa. Mm-hmm. Dr. Asa Don Brown, I used to struggle with people pleasing. It wasn't until I began to unconditionally accept and approve of my person. It's right. It comes back to this, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. That I realized my struggles with people pleasing. As a Canadian and an American, I can attest that people pleasing has a significant role in both cultures. I did find the Canadians extremely friendly, though. They just seemed delighted to please, and it didn't seem to come from a place of insecurity. It seemed to be because they were just genuinely nice people. I found that when I went to Canada. Melissa Montagnon found that funny. And John Yates. Hello, Neil. John, how you doing? I think we need another excerpt from the book, don't we?
Let's have some more. Yeah, let's hear from Helen more.
Ooh, okay. Another little excerpt. Okay, so this excerpt is called It's Not Personal. Sometimes it's about letting go of the meaning we attach to events. We love to ask, but what does it mean? And we have a tendency to make that meaning about ourselves, often in a negative way. For example, if your manager at work says, I want to talk to you when you have a minute, what is your reaction? For a lot of people, there is an immediate feeling of panic and a desperate internal query of, what have I done wrong? Followed by an armory of justifications ready to use as to why they chose to do things one way or another, when actually they don't know what their manager wanted to talk to them about. It could have been about a promotion opportunity, an IT issue, an office refurbishment, or something else. A useful exercise in such a situation is first, remember to breathe, and secondly, to ask, what do I know is fact and truth here?
Yeah.
Not just managers. I mean, I remember situations where I've just said to a friend, oh, can I have a word when you got a minute? And they're like, what have I done? And I'm like, no, mash or chips for dinner. You know, it's something as innocuous as that.
That's such our own projection, isn't it? A sort of thinking it must be big, it must be important, it must be, but that sort of automatic fear. But some of the therapy I had once, they said it's kind of not all about you. People are thinking their own things, living their own lives. They're not focusing on you most of the time, and so they're not. Chances are it's not going to be anything to do with you.
Yeah,
and that was really a relief as well to know that that can be slightly feel a bit afraid that you can't cling to people in that way, but actually that autonomy and freedom
ultimately that is where it's worth more than
ultimately that feels better.
An ounce of autonomy is worth more than a ton of clinging. Any day of the week. It takes a bit of guts to cross that.
That's it. Let go, bridge. And whether you can.
But then when you really start to feel your autonomy, it's like, oh, this is so much better. I love the way you said personal as well. I'm reminded of the three P's in positive psychology, which is personal, pervasive, and permanent. And apply that to everything. Is it personal? You've just covered that beautifully. Is it pervasive? Is it every area of my life? Probably not. Is it permanent? Pretty much nothing is in life. So apply the 3 Ps, and they're really good because they can be reversed as well. If you've done something good or something good happens, is it permanent? Well, for as long as possible. Is it pervasive? Yes, it's happening all over. Is it personal? Yes, I did that. You know what I mean? So you can reframe it in that way. So quite useful, the 3 Ps.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the thing is, we make things personal like automatically, and then we just and we tie ourselves up in knots with it, like worrying about, oh no, they don't like me anymore, or they're gonna tell me off for doing this. Like I remember getting occasionally, like particularly when I was younger, getting emails from like senior managers that were like one-liners, and that used to be enough to make me think, oh my God, what have I done wrong? Because I interpreted like a one-liner email as like somebody is in a really foul mood. Whereas actually, like most of the time, that was just their style. Like they're just like,
they were just in a rush.
Yeah, like they're just
some people, non-people pleasers don't feel the need to pad it with, if you've got a sec, just admit it and don't want to bother you. If only if you've got time, can I just, they don't bother with that. They're just like, when you've got a minute, or even that is, that's, it's, and when you realize that, and that you can perfectly easily send those emails yourself, that actually there isn't subtext. there's nothing there.
I suppose, people pleasing would always put the subtext there. You'd always put it through that
Yeah.
filter, wouldn't you? I remember one person getting really annoyed with me because I put an exclamation mark at the end of a text, and she interpreted that as having a go at her or shouting. It wasn't. And this went on for hours, and I'm like, I eventually texted and said, I'm not going to argue with you over an exclamation mark, full stop. I didn't want to
actually, messaging is very difficult, and I think this can
you
really
don't get the tone of
you don't
get the tone of voice.
So it can really trigger people pleasers, I would suspect, because you get a message, you can't tell the tone, and so you're that immediate, like you said earlier, Helen, the black and white thinking, that catastrophizing.
That's easy for you to say. Catastrophizing.
The catastrophic thinking of going, oh my goodness, it's going to be something massive and terrible, and it's absolutely binary. It's really good or really bad. And when you get a message, that's such a trigger because you cannot tell the tone. And that's the sort of exactly the time where you need to have a sort of mental tool and go, no, as you say, remember that it's not. It's probably nothing at all.
Like just remembering, like, to breathe and say, actually, like, what do I know, like, in this very moment that's like fact and truth, and then what don't I know? Can I just like leave it at that?
And actually, that breath, it's quite a lot in that, isn't it? Because it's not just giving yourself the space and the time, but you're sort of remembering that, I don't know, I suppose there's an autonomy in a breath, if you see what I mean. Does that make sense?
It does.
Just that I don't have to respond immediately. My emotions are not ruled by somebody else sending me a message. I can control my emotion through my breath, my body and my reaction.
And that's all you can control. And ultimately, that's all you can control. That is all you can control. You cannot
control other people. That was actually a really interesting people-pleasing thing, is thinking you can control other people with your behavior, when actually you really hardly have any impact at all in that respect.
Why waste all that energy?
Exactly. So all this expenditure of energy going into somebody's
absolutely. I bet that reminds me of something on your website, actually, which flagged up for me. Just scrolling down here, I've got it open on the tab. Do you feel responsible for how other people are feeling? Yeah, and that was a big one for me. But actually, not really. I'm not really responsible.
No.
Not really.
Is that a part of your book, Helen, talking about feeling responsible for other people's feelings?
Oh, hugely, yes.
Talk to us about that for a bit.
So people pleasers, we tend, that's part of the pattern, is that we feel that we're responsible for making other people happy, and then if we do that, then they will be happy and like us, and then we'll get back like the love and attention that we really need. So it's kind of this, we're kind of like outsourcing our happiness to someone else by making them happy. So, but it's so dangerous because, you know, we're putting our own happiness like in the pockets of somebody else. But we kind of think it works like that.
And actually, it's quite controlling, isn't it? To say, I'm going to make sure you're happy by doing this and this and this. Say you're on a date with somebody and you set up a lovely date and you say, let's make sure I'm going to make sure you're happy and you're having a good time. And if you did that the whole date, actually all that person gets is needy. I'm being controlled here. Yeah. And where's your feeling and where's my feedback from you? And what's your natural reaction rather than this sort of forced reaction of, are you having a good time yet? That's exhausting to actually be with somebody like that.
It is. I would say like a lot of this is unconscious, so like we don't know that we're doing it. So like for anyone that's watching or listening, like don't beat yourself up about it if you've been doing it, because you probably didn't know you were doing it. I mean, I didn't know that that's what I was doing.
You've probably beaten yourself up more than enough over the years. It's not another reason to beat yourself up. Let's be really clear about this. Let's be really clear about two things. Number one, it's not about beating yourself up. It's about awareness, which is completely different. Awareness and guilt are two completely different things. And also, this is not a permission slip to be a douchebag, to be like some of the characters we see on the internet, to be a complete arrogant, narcissistic douchebag. It's not about that at all. It's just being your natural self, and your natural, if you like, the most confident, the most natural, the best, if you like, not in the sense that you're being judged, but best version of
yourself, of your authentic self,
of your authentic self. Absolutely. Are you running any courses at the moment? Because I know you do seminars and things from time to time, don't you? And you do online courses.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. What I'm looking at doing is developing a program that builds on the book. So I will be doing a free masterclass probably at the beginning of October, just to introduce people to that. For those that, want to go a step deeper than what we go in the book.
If people want to be notified of that, if they go to your website that's on the screen, can they join a mailing list and ping out an email?
Yeah, and they can also download a free ebook from the website, and that will add them to the mailing list at the same time.
And also, it sounds like I'm finishing. I'm not. And if they want to buy the book, tinyurl.com, drop the fake smile, and that will take them to a website where they can buy the book. If you just type that in verbatim in your browser, tinyurl.com.
So to get your help.
Drop the fake smile.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Don't talk over me while I'm talking over you.
Especially not the URL.
Not the URL. That's the best bit.
But I'm just wanting to understand Helen's sort of role in, you've written the book and you coach people, is that right? As well as the courses? I'm just wondering how anyone can access help if they do feel they're a people pleaser too.
Yeah, so various ways. I mean, obviously there is now the book. There is an online course on my website, which is Better Boundaries for Better Relationships, which is aimed at people that identify themselves as giving too much in relationships. So that's kind of one of those like self-study courses. But obviously I also work with people either one-to-one or in group programs as well. So there are various ways of kind of getting that help to break free of people pleasing patterns, because I think we all have different ways that we like to learn and be supported.
Got any more from the book? Of course you have.
Yeah, I can read one more. Yeah.
It's really interesting, Helen. It's lovely to hear your words in your voice. I have to say, the excerpts are really great to hear.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is the beginning of chapter 2, actually, which is called "You Are Not Your Thoughts." I was panting from being out of breath after running back to the shop for more milk. My husband had already berated me for not having all the ingredients to make dinner, and because I was in danger of serving it up late, I felt so guilty. I had agreed that I had been careless, and I hurried back to the local shop to pick up more vegetables, but I'd forgotten the milk. My head was so jumbled from all the shouting, I couldn't even remember that short shopping list. As I ran back to the shop for the second time, I told myself I was so stupid. How could I forget the milk? Had I done it deliberately because he'd shouted at me? That showed how mean and selfish I must really have been. Now I was going to be late making dinner, and I knew how important it was that he ate on time. I kept trying and I kept failing. I believed it all. My thoughts were my thoughts after all, and so if I told myself these things, I must believe them and be the terrible person my thoughts told me I was. I knew from reading some Christian pamphlets when I was at university that I couldn't trust my emotions. Emotions were fleeting things, and I felt so utterly miserable so much of the time that I would rather ignore them anyway. That was how unconscious I was. It's also how many, many people live their lives. You identify with your thoughts and you believe that whatever you think about yourself must be true. But it's a lie. We are not our thoughts.
That's a great line. We
Brilliant.
are not our
thoughts. And that sounds very meditation-esque, doesn't it? And it's just not getting involved so much in your thought storm. It's being able to step back and observe that is just a thought, and that might not necessarily be true. Stop, take a breath. What do I know is fact, or whatever tool you use.
But this negative monologue of I must be wrong, I've made a mistake here, I'm being selfish, I know he needs to eat on time.
Yeah, number one, why does he need to eat on time? Why is he so important? number two, you forgot the milk, so what? Maybe he could go and get it for you. Why berate someone for forgetting bloody milk?
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? You start off with self-esteem, you end up with being with somebody who supports that belief, And then it's a vicious cycle of getting into sort of, being in that dynamic of somebody teaching you that you're as bad as you already thought you were. And so and so these negative thoughts are just what you know. And so that's what people go to. Yeah. They go to the familiar. And that's the point, and why it's so difficult to break out of it, why it takes a catalyst sometimes. But just to go, I now know that thought, that my brain was genuinely scrambled because I couldn't even think straight, because I was so triggered and upset and scared, and all of those reactions, simply not having dinner at the right time. It's just, and from an outsider's point of view, and we can all see that is so unreasonable of him and of your own thoughts to say that, to put that on yourself.
But to be living that day,
exactly.
And
so to be able to shine a light on it and say, I can see that's wrong now. I know that thinking that is wrong, that I am not selfish because I didn't do this. That's what I find particularly interesting about that personally.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it is like that. I think it was actually when I went on a mindfulness for coaches weekend, when I learned the basic principles of meditation, that I was introduced to this idea of, like, you're not your thoughts. Like, you can step back from your thoughts. And I was like, oh, right. Now, isn't that useful?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But just a little. But
I don't think it's as known a concept as it should be, actually, in mental health issues, of saying I can detach myself from it. I can see it over there. I used to have a thing when I had therapy that it would say, haul it out into the open, into the sunlight, and say, what am I actually saying to myself here? What is this little sniggling little thought in the back of my head? Actually, what is it? Is that helping me? Is that serving me?
And that's quite NLP-like, actually, because if you hold it out in front of you, it's not inside your head anymore. And then you create a detachment, and then what they call in NLP, and we will come onto this in future episodes, they call that a disassociation from it. And that's the kind of thing you're talking about, where before it was going on inside your head and you were associated with it. So you want to create that disassociation. There's even techniques where you can put someone that's bugging you, a little tiny version of them on the end of your thumb, and then imagine them speaking in a really squeaky voice, saying that thing that used to really upset you. And then suddenly, when they're only half a centimetre tall and sounded like Mickey Mouse, they ain't as scary anymore. And then you can just flick them off. And you know what I mean? That's
a good technique, isn't it? Yeah,
it is a good technique. And the reverse works as well. If you want to experience more of something, associate yourself into it. You've got a goal you want to achieve. See it, feel it in full Technicolor, in full techni sound of what it looked like.
That's what athletes do and things, don't they? Visualize.
The visualization, because the same neurons fire when they did an experiment where they got people to pretend to play the piano or actually do it. And even the ones pretending, the same neurons were firing, or even thinking about playing the piano, not even pretend. Yeah, so.
But what's interesting is that you're having these thoughts, but when you're in a relationship like that, a destructive sort of unhealthy relationship, those negative thoughts are being supported by the person you're with. So not only do you need, is one having to, did you have to go through having the therapy to understand those thoughts, but then actually having to leave the relationship because you have to get away from them being literally vocalized to you by somebody else as well. There's a lot of bravery in that.
Yeah, there really is. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
it is. It's fantastic.
Extraordinary.
And I think the world needs this message. That's why I'm always happy to have you on anytime you want to come on, because, someone could be watching this video for all we know in 10 years' time, and it could be just the thing they need to hear, because it's all available on all the platforms. They could be just watching it. That video with the two girls and that super hunk talking about what?
Sorry.
I wasn't.
This video.
I wasn't actually making a joke there. I don't see the humour in that person, but you feel it. And you never know; it just might be what they needs to hear at that moment. And I think you prepared 3 excerpts, but can we have one more? Can you spoil us a little? You would do this all afternoon, given the chance. We should do a lock-in and keep it going till 6 o'clock.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is fascinating.
Oh, okay. So this is a section called "Why It Is Hard to Ask for Help."
Oh,
very interesting.
I like this.
Yeah, me too.
We carry around stories about why asking for help is bad, but we are not often aware of them. What might some of those stories be? You might tell yourself that no one wants to help you, or you feel you don't deserve others' help, and that just isn't true. You have created a vicious cycle that reinforces this belief. You never ask for help, so no one helps you, and you begin to believe that no one would ever want to help you, or you believe that no one can help you. You are such a train wreck of a human being that you are beyond help. That is not true either, but I know it can feel like that. You may see asking for help as being weak. You may pride yourself on being able to do things on your own, and you've achieved so much that you may feel shame for not being good enough to continue on your own.
I notice how all this feeds into this negative spiral. If that's true, then that must be true. And if that must be true, then that must be true. And if that must be true, that must be. And it's just reversing that spiral where actually none of it was true. That it's perfectly okay to ask for help. And when you receive the help, you won't need help anymore. Fantastic. And then it'd be true that you don't need help for the right reasons, if you know what I mean, because you've received the help that you didn't think you were worthy of asking for in the first place.
But the absolute root of that is a confidence, isn't it? Of knowing that you have a worth.
Yeah.
And for the help, but for any of it, is that I'm even worthy of getting better. Yes. Some people think they're not worthy of getting better. I am just the train wreck. I don't have the capacity to get better.
Yeah. And I think it's also kind of what we kind of get programmed to believe as well. I definitely kind of felt that it was weak to ask for help, which is rubbish. But that's just kind of a belief that I'd formed. Whereas it's like, well, actually, if you just turn that on its head, just see things in a different way and see like asking for help as a strong thing to do, as a really good thing to do, then suddenly it becomes freer and easier to do it.
Yeah, I suppose a good yardstick of it is how it feels. If it feels like relief, if it feels like you're moving in the direction of downstream relief rather than paddling upstream, then it's a good thing to do, probably as a fairly good rule of thumb. And it's interesting you talk about belief systems. I'm sure it's not a language coincidence that belief systems acronym is BS, because we all carry around so many, so many BS, so many belief systems.
Yeah, terrible lessons we've learned. And I have had people say, "Where did you learn that lesson?" And it's like, where did that come from? And how many years have I been carrying this about?
That would make a really good podcast. Terrible lessons that I've now unlearned.
Yes,
that'd be a really good episode. I like that.
Yeah, but it is interesting the things we tell ourselves, isn't it? Yeah,
it is, and it's all. I mean, but the point is, we can at any point we can tell ourselves a different story.
Exactly,
if we want to. We want to start living that story, and you bringing it full circle, absolute living proof of that, Helen Snape.
You are, and these tools that you're putting out there. There's a lot on your website, the actual book itself, and the courses, and the help that you offer directly is all of these they're there to help people, whether they've had a catalyst or whether they're just realizing that they recognize themselves in this. You're giving them some tools.
Okay, if you'd like to buy the book, because we're not people pleasers, we don't care if you do or not, but you might.
I would like to please Helen.
Tiny URL. You know, when you think of something, you think it's going to sound really clever when I say it, and when you've said it, you realize it's now too late to go back. But I hope you know what I meant. tinyurl.com/drop-the-fake-smile. You can get yourself a copy there, and if you'd like to look into Helen's work more deeply, www.helensnape.com, or just Google Helen Snape. There's not that many Helen Snapes. If you Google it, your picture comes up, and it's fairly easy to find your website.
There's such sage advice in there. It's very inspiring, Helen. It's a great story.
As are you. Thank you very much indeed, Helen Snape. We will have you back on MRS again, I'm sure, before too long. Please keep in touch, keep us in the loop, and keep not pleasing people. And I remember I said this to you, I think the first time I interviewed you. If you haven't done it yet, if you're a people pleaser, make your anthem the Meghan Trainor song, No. It's not her best known song, but it sounds like a Destiny's Child song. No, my name is No. The answer is no. And everything is just no to everything. And it's a really good song. So Meghan Trainor, No. If I had to do a DJ dedication, it would be that one. Helen Snape, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you again hopefully soon.
Bye, Helen. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Wow.
She's great.
Isn't she?
Very interesting indeed.
Very interesting indeed, and something I think can absolutely apply to all of us.
Very brave of her to share her story and show her own vulnerability and how she got through it. I think that's absolutely the way to teach somebody else how to do it, is show them your own journey.
Because the best mentors, they're not like the gurus on the mountaintops. They're people that are just one step ahead. So they feel approachable, and it feels doable just one step at a time.
It's like putting a hand behind you on the journey, isn't it?
And just giving you a little shove.
It can help you.
Yeah, like a dolphin nudging it back into the pod, if you like. Can't think of any more metaphors. I'll be back Wednesday. We do some more NLP on Wednesday. Thank you for presenting today.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me here.
We'll just do some final comments. What have we got? Graham Pack. I think he's being rude again about me. Understanding what we believe is often based on others told us for their own reasons.
Exactly.
Very true.
So true, for their own reasons. Exactly. It's not about you, as you. Yeah.
It's not about you. Yeah, it's not about you. It's not personal and probably not pervasive or permanent. Claire Francis, all must take a look. That's cancer counsellor Claire Francis, and Dr. Asa Don Brown says, I wholeheartedly agree. How much better is your life by dumping the narcissist lump?
Well, that's it. I think people get trapped in a narcissistic relationship, not realizing that the freedom they have without it, because it's the fear that keeps you there.
On the other side, and the idea that they've engendered into you that you need them.
Yes, exactly.
Which is all a part of gaslighting, again, of which we will have none of on this show. Radio presenter, actor, and comedian Emily K. Owen. Thank you very much indeed. I will be back on Wednesday. We do some more NLP then, and Phil Dave will be here with the TV review and all the other good stuff on Friday. We'll catch you one of those, and Russ will be back next Monday. But in the meantime, have a great afternoon and take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Neil. Bye all.